Let's talk about time. One of its most puzzling aspects is its seemingly unidirectional nature. Fluids mix but don't unmix. Objects break but don't unbreak. We remember the past but not the future. Where does this fundamental asymmetry come from? To explain the divide between past and future, we need a radical new way to look at the world, to think about time differently. Imagine a world where time can briefly reverse its steps. Let's discover a universe where all of a sudden the clock ticks back. Let me explain. Consider a pendulum without friction, swinging back and forth endlessly, or a single particle collision in a perfect vacuum. These phenomena are both simple and beautiful. They describe motion on a microscopic level, free from any outside influence. Even though these systems clearly evolve in time, the direction of their evolution is not evident. You cannot tell if the motion is played backwards or not. You cannot distinguish past from future. This lack of time direction is even encoded in the fundamental laws of motion that describe them. Switch the direction of time and the laws themselves remain unchanged. Contrast these phenomena from everyday life. Smoke dispersing in the air, a freshly baked cake cooling down, or again, fluids mixing together. There is no ambiguity about the direction of time in these scenarios. You would immediately notice a time reversal. Thus, it seems that the nature of time depends on the scale of the system. A clear time direction manifests itself in large systems, whereas there is no such distinction to be found in the microscopic world. But where exactly is this boundary between macroscopic and microscopic? And thus, at which point exactly does time become directional? And why this discrepancy in the first place? Now, these are excellent questions, and it took a particularly brilliant 19th century physicist named Ludwig Boltzmann to formulate a coherent answer. And to do so, he ventured into the abstract, invisible world of the microscopic. So let's follow in his footsteps and uncover the reason why we experience time as we do, forever marching forward. We take the mixing fluids as the prime example of a system that manifestly exhibits a direction of time. Left on its own, you will never observe the fluids unmix again. To describe this behavior, we closely follow Boltzmann's reasoning laid out in his original paper. Boltzmann's starting point was the belief that matter is made up of atoms, tiny particles that are invisible to the naked eye. It's the microscopic interactions between them that collectively result in the macroscopic behavior we observe. Now, this idea will probably not shock you, but it wasn't so obvious just 150 years ago, and even widely contested back then. So Boltzmann imagines that if we zoom in on our system, eventually we will end up seeing particles moving in all directions, frantically bumping into each other. Doing so, however, seems to raise more questions than it solves. In fact, it isolates the problem very succinctly. Even though each individual collision is perfectly reversible in time, the resulting collective behavior is not. It is not the individual motion of particles that we experience as time, but rather the change of the overall picture. Consider what this means for our example. What we experience as time is not the individual atoms moving around and bumping into each other, but instead the colors of the fluids mixing together. Indeed, if you just wait a while, we see that the atoms seemingly conspire to get the colors all mixed up. However, after this point, no amount of waiting will unmix them ever again. And it is this asymmetry between mixing and unmixing that gives us a clear direction of time, emerging from the underlying directionless dynamics. But why exactly would this be? Boltzmann's way out of this conundrum are simple combinatorics. And to see how exactly, we first perform the spherical cow approximation. Now, despite its frivolous name, it's basically what allows scientists to make any progress at all. In general, whenever we want to answer questions about a very complex system, we first reduce the system to its essence. Then we abstract insights from this simplified system and then later worry about how to generalize it back to the full-blown case. In our particular example, we make two simplifications. We first reduce the number of atoms dramatically, from 10 to the power of 24 to just 16. Additionally, instead of moving freely through space, we arrange these particles on a 4x4 grid. The collisions between the particles in the fluid we had before are now modeled by atoms being able to swap places with their nearest neighbor. Therefore, collisions are now atoms randomly swapping places. Now, we have to be careful though, that in the simplification process, we didn't lose any meaningful behavior we set out to explain. To check this, we start with a completely separated state of fluid particles. At each time step, there is a random chance that two neighboring particles collide and swap places, which itself is an event that is perfectly reversible in time. Then, by letting time run its course, the system indeed ends up in a completely mixed state, and no amount of waiting will return it to the unmixed state again. So even in our simplified system, we have a clear direction of time. Now this is neat and all, but we still haven't figured out why our initial ordered state evolves to a mixed state, but then never goes back again. Well, Boltzmann says, in order to understand, we introduce two fundamentally distinct ways to look at the world. One way is to meticulously describe the microscopic system in all its detail, the exact location and velocity of each particle at every moment in time. This is called the microstate of the system. In our example, it's specifying the exact position of each blue and each green atom on the grid. And at this microscopic level, the motion of individual collisions is described by the fundamental laws that have no direction in time. When two atoms are swapped, you cannot tell whether it's played back or not. But this is not what we humans observe. Operating in the macroscopic world, we instead see a coarse-grained or averaged view, the emergent macroscopic properties of the system. We don't see atoms, we just see fluids mixing together. This description is fittingly called the macrostate, and for our simplified system, it means merely noting how many green and blue atoms reside at each side of the divide. And at this level, there is a clear distinction between past and future. We start out with separated fluids and we end up with mixed fluids. Now you probably notice that a macrostate requires much less information to describe than a microstate. In fact, only 2 numbers for the macrostate compared to 16 for the corresponding microstate. And this is a crucial insight to our story, and it allows us to make the level of mixture more quantifiable, which we will address later on. Thus, we can now describe the same system in 2 distinct ways. A microscopic view, where motion can go both ways, and an emergent macroscopic view we actually observe and where time is unidirectional. Now this is great. Scientists love to divide the world into different parts, but not without actually providing a bridge that crosses the gap. And Boltzmann gave us that bridge by reasoning that every microstate is equally likely to occur. They are what is called equiprobable. Nature has no inherent preference for any particular configuration of atoms or any particular microstate. If we let the system evolve and at random times take a snapshot to write down the microstate at that time, after a while we will find that each one occurs an equal amount of times. Now this is certainly not the case for the macrostate, which we initially observe as separated, but then never again. Now let's add 1 and 1 together. If each microstate is equally likely to occur, and each macrostate emerges from a different number of microstates, then the macrostate we observe is the one with the largest number of microstates, since this is just the most likely to occur. Alright, but what does this actually tell us about the evolution of the system? Let's go through it step by step. We start from a macrostate with very few microstates, for instance when the fluids are completely separated. At this point, there is no mixture, not even on the microscopic level. Intuitively, we know that the subsequent macrostate in time will be the one where the fluids are just slightly mixed. And the reason for this evolution is the following. The new macrostate has a greater number of corresponding microstates, and since nature simply picks out any new microstate at random, the macrostate with more microstates will be the most likely to emerge, and therefore the macrostate we observe will evolve away from our initial separated state. And this story repeats for all subsequent time steps, until we've reached the macro state with the absolute largest amount of microstates that is allowed for the system. This is what is called the equilibrium state, and because there is no macro state with a larger amount of microstates, the system will just remain in this equilibrium macro state, and we observe perfectly mixed colors from this point out. In this way, the arrow of time we observe is explained as an emergent probabilistic phenomenon. When you watch fluids mix together, what you're actually seeing is the system going from macro state to macro state, each time with an increasing number of possible underlying microscopic configurations of atoms. But how are we so certain that mixed macro states, such as the equilibrium state, have indeed more microstates than the separated macro states? Well, to find out, we will use the power of our spherical cow approximation. For our simplified system, we can simply count the number of microstates that correspond to each macrostate and write them down in a table. And this is exactly what Boltzmann did in his original paper. The initial macrostate of perfectly separated fluids can be written down as a macrostate with 8 blue atoms on the right hand side and 8 green atoms on the left hand side. Since all atoms of an equal color are identical, swapping them around doesn't change anything, and therefore there is only one microstate that corresponds to this initial condition. The next macrostate is the one with the smallest amount of mixture, having only one atom of different color on each side. The one green atom on the left hand side can be at 8 different locations on the grid, so 8 microstates. But for each of those states, the corresponding blue atom on the right hand side can also take up 8 different places. Thus the total number of microstates for this macrostate is 8 times 8, or 64. Next up is having 2 odd colored atoms on each side. From here on, the amount of possible microstates becomes too large to count manually. However, what we're doing in effect is counting the number of permutations of atoms for each macrostate. And luckily, there is a simple formula for this that we can use to compute the number of microstates for each macrostate. I've made a separate video on my other channel where I cover the exact details of these calculations. So for those that are interested in the gory details, I will link this video down below. Now once all the calculations are done, we obtain a table that is very similar to the one in Boltzmann's original paper, although his example case is slightly different. Let's look at our table. We observe that the completely mixed state of having an equal amount of color on each side, which is the equilibrium state, has 4,900 times more microstates than the macrostate of the initial separated system, which only had one microstate. Therefore, the mixed fluid of 16 atoms is 4,900 times more likely to occur than the fluids being separated, because each microstate is equiprobable. Of course, the system doesn't immediately jump to the completely mixed state, even though it has many more microstates. The system is bound to the local interactions of particles. Remember that particles can only swap with nearest neighbors. Therefore, the system will evolve towards equilibrium by visiting each macrostate with an increasing number of microstates. Now, I know you are smart and will rightfully object that this still means there is a tiny chance of a mixed system spontaneously separating. Surely, if we run the simulation long enough, we will briefly get to the initial condition again at some point, just by sheer chance. Does this mean that time as we observe it can suddenly take a step backwards? Well, in theory, yes. In practice, however, it is incredibly unlikely due to the vast number of atoms that we are dealing with in realistic macroscopic systems. When we increase the number of atoms even slightly, the chance of a sudden time reversal reduces to basically zero. As an example, for just 100 atoms, the ratio of the number of microstates for the equilibrium state and the separated state already becomes astronomically low. Therefore, the larger the number of atoms in our system, the more strict the direction of time we experience. At this point, it's time for us to return to the real world and leave the simplified version behind, but still build on the insights it's provided. Let's zoom back out and increase the number of particles dramatically, transforming the system to a white and black fluid slowly mixing together. But now from the vantage point of the microscopic interactions. And now we know that at each step along the way, the system will take on a macro state with an ever-increasing number of microstates. Boltzmann called the number of microstates the permutability measure W, and in a leap of genius, he linked it to the entropy, which back then was just a measure for heat, a manifestly macroscopic quantity. This gave rise to his famous formula S, the entropy, is equal to a proportionality constant times the logarithm of W, the number of microstates. And in this way, he effectively bridged the gap between the observable world and the invisible abstract world of the microscopic interactions between particles. Now this formula is so influential that the proportionality constant was given Boltzmann's name, and it also sheds a new light on the second law of thermodynamics, which says that the entropy of a closed system can never decrease. However, with what you know now, this is equivalent to saying that a system will always evolve towards a macro state with an ever-increasing amount of microstates. And this in turn, as we saw, comes down to just basic combinatorics. It took a radically new worldview to explain the direction of time we experience. Boltzmann believed that the properties of matter we observe emerge from underlying microscopic interactions. This idea was met with skepticism and even ridicule among his peers, and few took his theories seriously. Boltzmann, however, stuck to his guns, quoting, "Tell the truth, write it down clearly, and defend it till the end." And till the end he did. Boltzmann had a troubled life, riddled with periods of genius productivity and lapses of deep depression. Only after his early death, his ideas would be accepted and his genius acknowledged. Only with the help of Max Planck and Albert Einstein, Boltzmann theories would permeate the scientific world, and to this day, the formula bridging the gap between the invisible and the tangible is etched on his own gravestone. And this brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, consider watching my other video where we explore the details of curvature and how it applies to the universe we inhabit. I also have a Patreon if you wish to support me. I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.